So if you're like me, this is incredibly annoying when you see things like this. Basically, something that's using way too much negative space and is clipped off on the bottom. And I figured that was a great way, a succinct way to start off this video talking about PDF page sizing and working with PDFs in RackForms. So what am I on about? Well, basically, when it comes to working with PDFs in RackForms, and that's ingesting PDFs or outputting them, we have a tension that we're going to have to deal with, which is between professional solutions and consumer solutions. And as web developers, we're firmly entrenched in the area of consumer solutions. And that means that when somebody works with, outputs, prints a PDF, whatever, we're going to be dealing with issues that only consumers have to deal with. And we have professional level solutions stripped from us. Now, I know it sounds a little bit meta right now, but by the end of this video, as you'll see shortly here, we're going to better understand how we can import items into RackForms and convert them into successful PDF files. This video, I would say, is required viewing for anybody who wants to work with PDF files in RackForms. Okay, so first let's talk about the problem. I mentioned this tension between professional and consumer. So here's a good demonstration of that. So I went into Photoshop here and I created this document. So this is a document here, take note of this, 612 by 792. This is a US letter size document, albeit at 72 DPI, but an 8.5 by 11 document. You notice that as the content of this, I've just put these printer targets in each one of the corners. And note here that each one of these corners is touching the edge, right? So this, in other words, is a demonstration of how I can print something so that I don't crop or clip any of the material on the page. Now I basically took that and I saved it as a PNG file. So if I open this up in Apple's preview app here, you can see here that, as I would expect, I have a nice document that has these printer marks touch the edge of the document on all four corners. Here's where the problem comes in. Let's say I wanted to print this. As Apple was creating this particular software right here, they know that the vast majority of their users are going to be printing to a device, a laser or an inkjet printer, and not a printing press. And so because of that, they've basically made the decision that they're going to make sure that we're within the safe printable area of this PDF that we're creating. Now, of course, I'm not going to a printer, I'm going to a PDF, but it doesn't matter. Apple has still made this decision for me, and now there's essentially nothing I can do right here to make sure that my page prints exactly the way I want to. Now, I can play around a little bit with the scaling. I can maybe try changing this to 99, 98, 97, 96. Like, you could see it start to come in, but notice right here, it's maybe a little bit hard to see in the video, but it's still being cut off right there. And there is, and I could be wrong on this, I played around quite a bit before I started this video, there's nothing I can do about this. This simply says you may not print within this area of a page. And so no matter what I do, if I try to print this now as a PDF, I can say pagetest.pdf. And if I bring this in, sure enough, just as the preview showed me, that item has been clipped right there. However, if we move to a professional level piece of software, in this case Adobe InDesign, this software package is meant to print to printing presses, right? This can go to a printing press where instead of using a thing that feeds paper in and prints using a printer head, it's going to roll it through the rollers of a printing press. And because the rollers are much wider than the page that we're printing, we can print all the way to the edge of the paper. And so therefore, this program has no problem whatsoever allowing me to create a page that has items going right to the edge of the paper. And then when I export this to a PDF, allowing me to say, actually let me back up here and use one of the presets. This has no problem whatsoever allowing me to print directly to the edge of the page. So this is a setting right here that I didn't have when I printed using Preview. But because I have it here, I can basically say export, and this will get saved as a file called proper.pdf. And now you'll notice that it prints exactly the way I wanted it to, right? It's a PDF that prints right to the edge of the page, right? So the source and the output match. But again, this is a professional piece of software. And so this has just been a long roundabout way of saying that this is not an option when we deal with RackForms, unfortunately. We are going to be dealing with users who are not printing to a printing press. And in a way, this is a good thing, right? If you tried to print this document on a printer on your home, it would not work. Your printer cannot reach the edge of the paper, so you would miss all this content. Now, most of the time that doesn't matter. Why would I want to print this? But it's just important to note because this has now important implications for us when it comes to actually creating PDF files in RackForms. Okay, so with that in mind then, let's take this original PDF file, the PDF file that we've gotten from InDesign right here, and let's try to import this into RackForms. And we do that and we get something that looks like this right here. So we get in RackForms, and again, take note of our page size, 612 by 792. Does that sound familiar? That, again, was this size right here, 612 by 792. So RackForms has appropriately scaled this PDF in, and now if I try to just run this as a standard form page, I'm going to get something where, bearing the margin that we have applied by default to this form, our items are going right to the edge of the printable area. However, if I try to print this now, notice I don't have any page headers, nothing selected. If I try to save this as a PDF, I'll call this from Firefox, notice what it's going to do. It's going to shrug all of our content in. So see what it did right there? It took this original file and it shrunk it down so that we had the proper printable areas. Now, keep in mind right here, there is the exact right pixel dimensions for this form page, but notice what it did right here. It's just all sorts of messed up, right? We got this huge amount of space down here. We got tons of extra space right here. So this is an utter fail in terms of a print. However, again, this is what's important to mind when you start getting frustrated with this, is that this will print on somebody's printer. This user is never going to have content clipped. It may be small and off-center, but at least they're not going to have anything clipped. So how can we actually deal with this in RackForms? Well, the first thing that I want to do is that I want to make sure that I never allow my users to print a PDF directly from the browser. Now, there's no way you can actually prevent them from printing, but we can essentially say, no, I want RackForms to be the one to create the PDF for you. And when I do that, then we're going to get a much better piece of output. So notice now that our edges are much more closely aligned to where they should be, and it is much better centered as well. So the first real hint here is twofold. Going back to the original import process, when I import this page, by default, RackForms will always scale our PDFs up by 1.5%. And that's usually a really good default to have, because most of the time, when we have a printed page that we bring into a web page, text is too small. So you want to blow it up a little bit, and 1.5 is a really good default for doing that. However, if I want to have a one-to-one representation, then I'm going to want to put this to 1.0. So that's step number one, set our PDF scale to 1.0. Then when you bring it into your form page, again, you will find at default that if, for example, we started off by an 8.5 by 11 original, our page size value should be exactly 612 by 792. Again, this is 72 DPI, what an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper is. Okay, so with that done then, the second big thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we have DOM PDF as our PDF engine, and we want to make sure that we set a custom page X and Y size. Now the values that you're going to use for this may differ slightly depending on what your personal preferences are, but the values you should almost always use are 536 by 682 if, as a little note here says, if we're printing to US letter. So if we're going to US letter 612 by 792, then we should use 536 by 682 for our custom X and Y dimensions. And if we do that, when I print this printed PDF page, as you can see right here, items that we have overlaid on the PDF, like this text field, should print beautifully, and we should get relatively close to the edges. It's not perfect. Unfortunately, again, this is consumer software, so I can't print to the edges, but at least if somebody prints this off at home, they're going to have a PDF which doesn't have clipped content. So that's basically it then. Those are the big hints that you want. I would encourage you to play around though. There's a lot of different options that you have available to you here. For example, we didn't really talk about using the other PDF engines. So we have TC-PDF, and this is going to print slightly differently as well. One thing to look out for here is notice that sometimes if we have form fields in a TC-PDF file, it actually tries to print those as input fields. And so sometimes it actually doesn't like that. And so you're going to actually find that maybe if you want the PDF to get output to the user, you're not going to want to use TC-PDF. By contrast, MPDF generally seems to have a problem with using a large background image like this. You get this really small output right here. Now we can probably tweak this by changing our custom page size, but again, this is almost more trouble than it's worth at this point. If you want to get nice output, just use DOM PDF right here. That said though, these are all available for you to experiment with though. Here we're using a big background image, but if you actually got rid of this background image, well then MPDF is usually an excellent choice because it does really nice text rendering and so on and so forth. So she'll leave it at that for now, but as I always like to say, please let us know how you're working with PDFs and some cool stuff you've done. We can always be reached at info@rackforms.com, and of course we welcome any additional questions you have about working with PDFs. It's a bear, but it can be done.